Young people paying into the system and not going to get anything out of it, obviously, is abrogation of our responsibilities.
I want to pivot the subject somewhat to the whole issue of change and populism, which is becoming two big themes in this campaign. At least for the moment, change seems to be the watchword of this campaign. And Governor Huckabee, you are pushing a message of economic populism. Here's how you put it on the campaign trail recently. Let's watch.
The reason that our campaign is catching fire is because people had rather elect a president who reminds them of the guy they work with, not the guy that laid them off.
Now, Governor Huckabee, this was widely seen as you talking about Governor Romney. Does he remind you of someone who once laid you off? And are you
Didn't lay me off. I plan to be president, so I hope he helps me get elected. This is not a reference to anybody. It's a reference to the spirit of this country. There's an issue in this country where a lot of people feel like that the folks elected in Washington don't have a clue about how much struggle is going on in the American family. When people sit around their dinner tables at night, they feel the effect of $3 a gallon gasoline. They feel the effect of double-digit inflation on their health care costs. They understand what it costs when college textbooks cost as much as the tuition. They understand that, and they're working 2 jobs, and they're still not getting a great deal ahead from where they were the year before. You know, I get called a lot of things. I still believe that we shouldn't have an economic system that tries to make rich people poor. We just need one that tries to make poor people have an opportunity to get rich. And that can't happen when you have a government that becomes the greatest competitor to small business. 80% of all our jobs, Chris, comes from small business in this country. But the environment we've created, too much taxation, too much regulation, too much litigation, is a result in job migration. We lose jobs that go overseas that we ought to be keeping here. If that's populism, then I'm guilty, because I think that if you understand the struggle of a lot of American families, our party had better wake up to that. If we don't, we're going to lose not just those families, we're going to lose what the Reagan Revolution was about. It was about getting those working class people to believe that the Republicans cared about them, had a message for them, would empower them, and give them a chance to live the American dream.
Governor Romney, you have a problem with any of that?
Not with what he said, with what was on TV, yeah. Because, you know, you're not going to help the wage earner in America by attacking the wage payer in America. It's an old saying. The truth of the matter is, it really is kind of offensive, I think, when I watch our Democrats, or anybody else for that matter, attacking corporations that are creating jobs. I've spent 30 years in the private sector. I spent my time learning how to build a small business. I built a small business and grew it. I helped go back and turn around a company that was in trouble. I'm proud of the fact that some of the companies we invested in created a lot of jobs. I had some failures, too. I know what it's like to have to make a tough decision. I see businesses go under. But I can tell you, I've been in the economy. I've been there in the real world. And we need a president who knows how the economy works, knows why jobs come and go, understands what the competition from China really means and how to stand up to it. We also need a president who knows how to shrink the federal government. And I know how to take out people that aren't needed and how to take out programs that aren't needed. And we need some of that in Washington.
Well, let me jump back in on that, because, you know, it sounds as if that I'm thinking that we ought to go after corporations. I'm the only person that says we ought to have no corporate tax, no personal income tax. We ought to get rid of taxes on dividends, capital gains, and death. I really think our whole tax system is based...
You're going to get rid of death?
I would like to get rid of death, but I'm talking about the death tax. I'll work on death.
We're together on that.
First death tax, then we'll get rid of death. In my previous profession, I dealt with getting rid of death, and now just the death tax.
Didn't work very well. Sorry.
What I want to make sure is that people understand that if we have a tax system that penalizes productivity, it's counterintuitive to a good economic system. And with all due respect, I think we've got to recognize that we have people who are in trouble today because sometimes folks who get into the capacity to buy up a company, they dissolve it, they split it up, people lose their jobs. And when that happens, then they lose jobs, jobs go elsewhere. And then people who have taken those things can take their money, shelter it at maybe 15% income, not the 35% that the self-employed people in this country pay, or they can hide it away in a Cayman Island offshore bank account and pay no tax on it. The average American is going to resent the fact that there is not a level of equity in the tax system. And again, I don't want to tax rich people and make them poor. I want to give them every opportunity to be even richer.
Let me bring in Mayor Giuliani here, because one of the, you like it or not, one of the big ideas of this campaign, one of the original ideas that's been offered is Governor Huckabee with his fair tax, consumption tax, do away with the IRS, do away with the income tax. Mayor, good idea or bad idea?
Well, actually, what I wanted to do is to say to you that I've probably had the most experience of anyone at this table at helping to bring people out of poverty. I took over a city that had 1.1 million people on welfare. I left behind a city with 670,000 fewer people on welfare. I took over a city that had 10.5% unemployment. I left behind a city with less than 5% unemployment, and I instituted a workfare program. What as Republicans we don't do well, including me, all of us, we do not explain to the poor that our programs, our policies, are the ladders out of poverty, that they are being denied by a lot of the Democratic programs. A good job, a good education, the work ethic. So what I did with welfare immediately upon coming into office is I tied welfare to work for anybody who could work. It was called workfare. It was very controversial. People were very angry at me. The ACLU, I think, sued me. I don't remember. They sued me a lot. I can't remember all the times they sued me. But I stood up, and we fought the battle, and we ended up with 670,000 fewer people on welfare, hundreds of thousands of people on welfare working by allowing the basic principles that work in America of work, good education, operate in the lives of poor people. And as Republicans, we need to go into the neighborhoods where there's poverty and explain how our programs work. I would go into the neighborhoods where I was being castigated for workfare, and I would say to them, I'm doing workfare because I love you more. I care about you more. I care about you more than just being a statistic. I believe that if I can get you a job, I will keep you out of poverty, and I will keep you with the dignity to be able to take care of your family.
Senator Thompson, you, as we said, you have a tax plan. Mike Huckabee has a tax plan. What do you think of his fair tax?
Well, I like certain elements of it. I like the fact that it's moving toward reform and it's simplified. I'm a little bit concerned that we would wind up with a consumption type tax and an income tax later on. You'd have to have a constitutional amendment to make sure that did not happen, and that's unlikely. I think that we ought to move toward a flatter tax. That's why I proposed a move in the right direction toward reform, something that can actually get passed, unlike a lot of the things that we wish would happen that never will. I think that a person ought to be able to fill out their taxes the way that they traditionally do if they want to, or have an alternative along the lines of a House Republican plan that's been tested and it's revenue neutral, that would say basically this: if you have an income of $100,000 or less as a couple, $50,000 as an individual, you're at a 10% bracket, and if you have over that, you're at a 25% bracket, and that's it. I mean, you get a personal deduction, but that's it. And you could have your choice. That'd be a major move. I think we would see a lot of people move toward that, and it would be a major step towards substantial tax reform, which of course is necessary. I mean, we've got a 66,000-page monstrosity now that makes us very competitive. It's the most complicated in the world. And as Rudy says, he's apparently read my plan that I put out a couple of months ago about the corporate tax rate. Makes us very.
It's a good plan.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, I want to move back to this whole issue of change, which is where we started this section. Senator McCain, Governor Romney says that he's an outsider who can shake things up, and that you have been in Washington forever, and that you've had your chance. Who is better prepared to change Washington, you or Governor Romney?
I know that I have been an agent of change. I'm proud to have been one of those who played a key role in bringing about one of the most important changes in recent years, and that was the change in strategy from a failing strategy in Iraq pursued by Secretary Rumsfeld, which was needlessly causing the sacrifice of our most precious American treasure. And I and several others fought for this change in strategy, said we had no confidence in the then Secretary of Defense, Secretary Rumsfeld, and this change has had enormous benefit to America, to our security, and to our future. And I am convinced, when you saw today an American al-Qaeda who is dedicated to the destruction of the United States of America. When you saw Osama bin Laden in the last 2 weeks with messages, one of them directly to the Sunni in Baghdad, in Anbar province, to tell them to turn against the Americans, I believe that I know that strategy is working. I know it's the greatest change. I don't know of a better change than saving American lives. And of course, I've been the agent of other change. Some people don't agree with campaign finance reform. That was a change. Some people don't agree with the line item veto when we passed it. That was a change. I have been an agent of change in Washington. I know how the system works. I know how to nail down the people that want to charge the American people $2 billion extra for an Air Force tanker. And I know how to bring about change, and I know how to go after them, and I've done that. But I'm very proud. I'm very proud of the change in Iraq that has saved young Americans' lives. And I can't imagine, and I can't be prouder of being that kind of an agent of change.
Governor Romney, you and I sat at that desk this morning, and you said to me, yes, John McCain is a reformer, but in his decades, he's been an ineffective reformer. That was your word.